Jane Fernandez, a very warm welcome to Singapore. Thank you so much for being my guest at All That Matters.
Thank you very much for having me.
Seems like you've had a pretty busy summer, or your winter. You presided over perhaps one of the sporting events of the decade with a budget of over $570 million. You had a 2 billion TV audience. You've sold nearly 2 million tickets. You put women's football on the front page and the back page of the global media. You had the highest watched TV program in Australia ever. And you reached the living rooms of hundreds of millions of fans around the world, surely inspiring the next generation of female athletes and fans. Amazing.
Thank you very much.
How are you feeling?
I feel very, very happy now. I feel extremely proud of the team that we brought together to deliver the FIFA Women's World Cup right across Australia and New Zealand. It was a huge, huge effort by so many people. We had a workforce of over 1,200. And it takes an absolutely committed community to deliver these tournaments, to deliver the FIFA Women's World Cup at that level. So yeah, I'm very grateful for everyone's work, everyone's support, and I'm very happy to be able to sit here today knowing what a success it was.
Well, for the sake of the audience, the last time we met was just after you'd won the bid. We were talking at a virtual All That Matters. You were hanging out with Elmo from Sesame Street, and I was quarantined in my bedroom. So thank God things have moved on.
Yes, thank goodness. Actually, Elmo probably was one of the last interviews I had, so you've got some big boots to fill.
Anyway, just to kick things off, I just want to do a bit of a scene setter. So if I could ask you just to give a brief overview of how you won the bid, the process, the vision, the stakeholders that were involved.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's amazing when I think back to June 2020, which was when we were awarded the rights to host the FIFA Women's World Cup. So this journey for me actually started in 2017. I had worked in football previously for Football Australia. I had left after delivering the AFC Asian Cup, which was a huge success in our country. And during that time, there was always these discussions about the FIFA Women's World Cup, about what it would be like to host that tournament in Australia. And in 2015, the appetite wasn't there to actually go forward and bid. However, fast forward and these conversations came live again. And in 2017, I went back to football to lead the team to deliver the tournament, or to deliver the bid, I should say. It was a huge lift, a huge support by all of our governments to be able to do this. And we built an amazing team, some of who came and joined us to deliver the tournament. But at that point in time when we were delivering or developing the bid, we knew we wanted to deliver a tournament of firsts. A tournament of firsts is what was our key line and the key vision for the FIFA Women's World Cup 2023. And pleasingly, we were able to do that. The first time the tournament was held in the Asia-Pacific region. You know, the first time two different football confederations came together, Oceania and Asia, coming together to deliver a FIFA Women's World Cup for the Asia-Pacific region, and that was really, really important for us. I would add to that, though, we did start bidding by ourselves, so it was an Australian-only bid until after the success of 2019, the competition was expanded and we joined with New Zealand to deliver a really strong proposal.
Fantastic. Clearly the event, I mentioned a few of them earlier, you had many successes, but how do you go about measuring those successes, and how do those achievements stack up against your sort of pre-event expectations?
Look, we blew this out of the water. I mean, the expectations we set during the bid was an attendance of 1.5 million. France was 1.1. So we always want to do better. We always want to take the tournament to the next level, and we absolutely did that. I think part of the reason why we were able to do that is because of our belief in the tournament and where we wanted to position it, and that led to 1.98 people walking through the gates to watch this tournament across Australia and New Zealand. Just absolutely phenomenal for us.
And what would you say was perhaps your proudest achievement in all?
Well, there was so many. I think definitely filling the stadiums, and we always knew we would deliver an amazing 64 football matches that would really capture the hearts and minds. But doing and having the vision to do things around the tournament was also really, really important for us. We delivered a Beyond Greatness speaker series. So Beyond Greatness was the tagline for the tournament. And Beyond Greatness is really about pushing yourself to go that next level, pushing yourself to go further than you ever thought you could. And we saw that on the pitch, and I saw that in my own office. We saw that with all of our partners. Everyone was really involved in this tournament. And that series, we took it right around the country, right around Australia. And we showcased female leaders from across the industry. And I'm really, really proud of that because it took a lot of work and a lot of effort to do that, plus deliver the tournament.
So unless you were lucky enough to be in the stadium, and like most of us, we had to watch the event on the TV, could you take us perhaps a little behind-the-scenes tour of the event, of what goes into staging an event of this magnitude?
Yeah, it's not for the faint-hearted. It takes a lot of work by a lot of people. We had 40,000 people accredited for the tournament, a total of 10 stadiums. In Australia alone, we had 32 training sites. 11 kilos of ice was used, I was told the other day, which I thought was quite interesting. We planted 30,000 trees as part of our sustainability program. There was over 200 kilometres of cables, over 20,000 wireless wired ports used. I mean, all of these stats are quite staggering because you take these numbers and then you think you need lots of people to actually do this, to actually put these things in place. I think that, ensuring that we had the right infrastructure in place and that we were dealing really well with not just stadiums, because the stadiums end up being some of the easiest parts, but also the hotels, the airports, the fan festival sites. It takes a huge partnership approach and a huge collaboration to be able to do this.
Fantastic. I mean, you set all sorts of attendance records. Your average gate was more than 30,000 per game. You're more than 80% capacity in your matches. But my question to you, really, and you mentioned it was one of your proudest things, is how do you go about selling 1.98 million tickets to a Women's World Cup?
Yeah, look, I think the way we positioned the tournament from the very, very beginning is really, really important and very critical. We always said this would be the biggest event Australia had hosted since the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games. And we honestly believed that. And so we were always dedicated to delivering on that promise. I think that we had very affordable ticket prices. We wanted to make sure that this was family friendly. Women's football traditionally has a very family-friendly audience, and we wanted to make sure that everyone could come along. So we set the ticket prices, we did our research, and I think we got that price point exactly right. I think in 2027 they might be a bit more expensive though now.
So were you targeting new fans, football fans? What was who was your target audience?
Well, we knew the football fans would come. That was a guarantee, and they did. We had this group called the Convincibles. So those people that like sport, might not know that much about football, love a major event, they will just sit back and wait and see what happens. And so there was definitely some targeted marketing towards this group. And it was fantastic to see the FOMO that crept in. So once the tournament and the momentum behind it grew, everyone wanted tickets. Everyone wanted to be a fan in the stand, which was fantastic. The other great thing we did was we developed a fantastic multicultural program. So we partnered with an agency and really did some targeted and specific communications to the many, many different cultures represented through our game. One of my favourite matches was watching the Colombian fans. It was Colombia v Germany in Sydney. Phenomenal. And we engaged really strongly with the Colombian community, and we saw the results of that in the stadiums.
Australia's obviously, and New Zealand, I mean, let's not forget New Zealand, is a long way away from most places in the world. I mean, what sort of foreign visitors, international fans, what sort of numbers were coming over for the event?
We had about a 20% rate of tickets purchased outside of Australia. And majority of those came from the US and from England, which is what we thought would happen. That's not a surprise. So yeah, we definitely had a bump in international visitation, which is really important to our governments across Australia and New Zealand. It was interesting actually at the draw, everyone was sitting on the edge of their seats to see who was going to get USA and who was going to get England. And pleasingly, we both got one. So it would have been quite an interesting discussion if that didn't happen.
Sure. So for the first time, and we talked about first, FIFA sold the Women's World Cup as a standalone commercial event, both in terms of the broadcast rights and sponsorship. Can you share with us a little bit of what the partners did on the ground and during the event to activate their sponsorships?
Yeah, look, I think it was a really a bold and the correct decision to take by FIFA to do this, to sell the women's game, to sell the FIFA Women's World Cup as a standalone property. And we've reaped the rewards. As you said earlier, we've broken even. It was a $570 million budget, and the President has announced at the Women's Football Convention that we did break even. First time ever for a FIFA Women's World Cup. We loved seeing how the brands engaged with the tournament. One of my favourite ads was the Adidas Play Till They Can't Look Away. I'm not sure if you or anyone in the room has seen that ad. If you haven't, definitely have a look at it. Fantastic, really telling the story of female footballers from their lens, but also involving a lot of male football stars as well. So play till you can't look away. It was also interesting to see the partners of the federations as to how they marketed their own teams. The Matildas, strong brand, very well marketed, and we saw the Nike campaign of Till It's Done, so that was fantastic there. And then the other one I really remember was the French Federation. You may have seen the orange ad, and I think that had a huge impact. You know, people are looking at this saying it's male players, but actually it's not. And I think that's the lens, that's the shift. And I think that, you know, we've witnessed that by the young boys and the men in the stands coming along, cheering on these amazing athletes, because this is really just about football for them. The gender has no play in it.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting discussion about whether or not, you know, it's about, you know, attracting football fans and say, hey, you know, the women's game is pretty good, or it's, you know, it's a game and a sport in itself, and, you know, it should be treated separately in terms of always that comparison. We've seen players, fans, we talked about sponsors using the Women's World Cup as a platform to promote such worthy causes such as women's equality and diversity. What sort of activities were FIFA doing, or the event around, you know, promoting those sort of causes?
Yeah, diversity and inclusion were one of the key pillars of our value system for the tournament and also for the organisation. And so it was really important that we had a diverse and inclusive workforce. So even when we started building the local organising committee, we've really focused on that. I think that the way that we developed our sustainability strategy also ensured that we were very focused on diversity and inclusion, especially around the roles of women in the organisation. So our senior leadership team, it was 60% female, 40% male. Our CEO, a male, a guy, Dave Beach, he was really walked the talk on that one. And I think the fact that just the way that the teams were treated, the increase in prize money, and FIFA's made a commitment to equality in prize money by 2027. I think the fact that the levels of service given to the teams to ensure that there was parity with the men's just demonstrated exactly that. The focus is on equality.
I mean, you touched on it there as well. I mean, in terms of, you know, within sport, within the world, sustainability, you know, protecting the environment, obviously, you know, equally worthy causes these days. And certainly when it comes to major events, what sort of policies or activities did you have in that regard as well?
Yeah, I've worked in a number of major events, and this is the first one where we've had a dedicated sustainability department, which I think even that is really important. We had a wonderful head of sustainability who drove our sustainability strategy, but importantly, we embedded it right across the whole organisation. You can't just have one voice leading this. It needs to be embraced by everyone, and it was, thankfully. We were really focused on waste minimisation. We were also, for the first time, we received green building certification for all of our stadiums. So that's ensuring that they are built in an environmentally friendly way, but also that they operate in an environmentally friendly way. So that was a first for our stadiums across Australia and New Zealand. We made sure that we were able to reuse a whole lot of the, not just the equipment, but also signage and media tribunes and all of this overlay that you have to build in for a tournament of this nature. The media tribunes was a great one because they can just get packed down again and reused for another event. So fantastic. And then the other thing we focused on was cultural engagement, was ensuring that our First Nations people, that our Maori culture was embedded right across all elements of the tournament. So from a human rights perspective, we're really focused on that. We developed a cultural panel, representation from 3 Indigenous Australians, 3 Maori ladies, who every decision we took, we ran by them, from the development of our brand, from the way we did our sports presentation, how we welcomed teams to the pitch, from our ceremonies, opening and closing. So, and very, very proud of the fact that we were able to have approval to have the Aboriginal flag, the Torres Strait Islander flag flown in our stadiums, and the Maori flag in New Zealand. So those elements all made up part of our sustainability strategy, focusing on environmental, but also social and economic as well.
And challenges, I'm sure there are a few on the way. I mean, obviously the fact that you awarded the event during COVID probably didn't really help the planning of the event at that stage. Can you maybe go into a few challenges that you had to face and maybe how you were able to overcome them? That would be great, thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, as you say, COVID. So we won the rights to host the tournament during COVID times. And so we built the team during COVID. So I can't even begin to... Actually, I should count it up, how many interviews I did on Teams to employ my heads of department, which was huge. And then you're not in a room together. So some of them I already knew, some I didn't, but then you don't get together in a room until a year after. I mean, that creates many challenges in creating culture. I think we did a pretty good job of doing it over Teams, I must say. And there was a lot of trust that was always there. The other thing, the other challenge around the whole COVID environment is there wasn't any time to go back and forward to Zurich to build relationships, to build trust, to build confidence in the way you would normally do over dinner, in a room together. And then also, we were also working with New Zealand. So we weren't able to go over there either. I met my boss once and then New Zealand was shut down and I didn't meet him again in person for another year. So the fact that we were actually able to come together as a group, because those of you who have worked on major events, you've got to be in the room together, you've got to be in the trenches together. That's how these events really succeed. I think there's always challenges in delivering major events, but when you're delivering them with another country and trying to get alignment, which is what we always wanted, we wanted to make sure that fans, players, partners had the same experience no matter where they were. And so working together to ensure we could achieve that creates more work, but it's important work. So we really dedicated time and effort to doing that, knowing that we wouldn't be exactly the same just because we aren't. But we really did a great job, I feel, in coming together. And as one was our bid slogan. So I feel that we did deliver on that promise as well. But I think developing a workforce, building a workforce in those times was definitely a huge challenge.
And you shut down Sydney Harbour Bridge, is that right?
We did. That was a challenge and an opportunity. I had this crazy idea of closing Sydney Harbour Bridge to really create awareness and momentum behind the tournament. We did that in the June before we kicked off the tournament on the 20th of July. And I honestly believe that moment got us so much coverage around the world that I think it really made people sit up and listen and realise that the FIFA Women's World Cup is coming. And it's not just a small football tournament. This is a major sporting event. And from that moment, you could feel the shift. You saw ticket sales increase. You could feel the momentum and the drive and people really wanting to get on board.
When discussing major events, it's really hard not to hear the word legacy. So, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but I am going to ask you, what do you think will be the legacy of this Women's World Cup 2023?
Yeah, I mean, legacy, we were committed to delivering a legacy when we started bidding. So whilst I was working for Football Australia then, we wanted to make sure that legacy was the first thought, not the afterthought. And that's because we needed to leave a legacy from bidding if we weren't going to be successful. And so it was during those days that we really focused on what would be the legacy. And of course, and there will definitely be a spike in participation. That's just not even in question anymore. There's been investment into infrastructure around training sites that we have invested as a part of hosting the tournament. We've developed female leaders, both on and off the pitch. we've actually left a legacy in creating awareness around Australia and New Zealand as tourism destinations. But one of the key things for me, one of the things that I was really, really passionate about doing is ensuring that we were creating role models for young girls, because now the people that they're watching playing sport look like them. And this goes so far for these young girls to actually see their heroes on the pitch, and boys as well. I mean, so many of my friends who have young boys are telling me these great stories where their sons are out in the backyard pretending to be Sam Kerr or Lucy Bronze or Steph Catley, and they're all adopting, they do not see gender. They really don't. They are just purely celebrating amazing athletes and amazing football, and that is going to be the shift. We had there was a gender equality symposium that was put on by the Australian government during the tournament. And I remember one of the speakers said, a male, Bruce Gitte, said, in 10 years, we won't even need to have this because it won't even be a discussion point. And that for me is going to be one of the greatest legacies.
Well said. I think shortly after the event, whether or not they were capitalising on the furore of the event, but the Australian government came out and I think they said they were going to support women's football. No, well, I think it's women's sport in general to the tune of 200 million. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's true, and that's a significant investment by the Australian government to support all women's sport. So due to the excitement and also the success of the tournament, a commitment not just for football but for all women's sport, they will be investing $200 million. The categories are still being developed and discussed as to where the money will actually go, but there will be an application process for all sport to be able to apply for the funding. But I think it's so important because we can't do this without investment. I mean, FIFA's invested over $1 billion into the development of the women's game. And the quality of the football compared to 2019, the France World Cup, to now, it was unbelievable. I mean, some of the goals were phenomenal. Linda's goal of the tournament, Sam Kerr, that cracking goal against England in the semi-final, well outside the box. And I think the investment in our leagues around the world is leading to this increase in the product. The better the product, the more the investment, the greater the game will grow.
And where do you think that investment needs to be, and where do you think the challenges are for women's football particularly?
Well, I think, the FIFA investment goes into a number of different areas for the women's game, from coaching, refereeing, administration. I honestly believe that having more females in leadership for not just football, but all sport is actually going to shift even further, positively shift. I think making sure that females are at the table making decisions around where the investment goes is also going to be critical. Many years ago, it was deemed that female sport, women's football, was not a good investment. And those that were smart invested early, and look at where we are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So Australia, obviously quite well known for hosting major events, whether it's Olympics or World Cups, but it seems to be carving out a bit of a niche for itself when it comes to hosting women's major events, whether it's the Women's World Cup of cricket, basketball, now football, in a few years' time, rugby. Why do you think that is, and what is Australia's sort of secret recipe for making these events so successful?
We just have great people working on them. Australia is really committed to delivering major sports events. The government New South Wales government, I should say, had a 10 World Cups in 10 years strategy, and that was a mixture of men and women. They understand the power of major events, and major events, they have a positive economic return from the ones that we've seen lately. The FIFA Women's World Cup will increase the GDP by over $500 million. So there's always, and when we were bidding, we had to actually demonstrate back to government that this is a sound investment from a social and an economic impact perspective, and we were able to do that. So one, it's about business. Two, it's also about tourism. It's about selling the country. And during this time, we always talked about, building back post-COVID. and I think we definitely did that. But I think from a sports perspective, from an elevation of women's sport perspective, it's the right thing to do. But most importantly, it's also a smart business decision, and the government understands that. We have a huge runway of major events, as you say, culminating in the Olympics in 2032. So we've built a really strong major events industry, and you can see those who started in Sydney 2000, and as they've kept going, some have travelled around the world, some have been lucky enough to stay at home and deliver more events. But yeah, it's a really we have a really strong industry. Government understands the benefits of it.
And in terms of that sort of secret recipe, I mean, obviously, Asia or the rest of the world, if they had ambitions to be hosting women's major events, whether that's the Football World Cup or otherwise, is there anything that you can share, or how you would give, your advice of how to approach, a bid successfully, but also how to more importantly, perhaps, is the successful staging of the event?
Yeah, well, I think you have to have a very bold and a very strong vision, which we had, and you need to walk the talk. You need to actually live the vision, and you need to ensure that everyone that's investing in, partnering in and delivering the bid buys into that as well. I think from the moment we started bidding in 2017, Football Australia invested in the Matildas brand, and I remember there was the Matildas. They were playing Chile, I think it was, from memory. It was 2017, and it was in Penrith, which is a bit further out from Sydney Central. And you could just feel the shift, and the stadium was basically full, a boutique venue, about 20,000 people. And you could feel that momentum around it, but that was because there was a decision taken to invest, to build the brand and to build the heroes. And we've seen the benefits of that now in 2023, with the Matildas brand being super, super strong. So I would say that if it's football, for example, invest in your team, build your team and prepare your team, because the more they play, the more people understand who they are, and the more heroes are built, and that just creates the momentum. I think from an infrastructure perspective, that's critical for a bid. So ensuring that you've actually got the infrastructure to deliver, because bids, they're not. It's not cheap to deliver a FIFA Women's World Cup, or any World Cup for that matter. So investing in infrastructure is also critical. But again, support from government and buy-in from government as a key partner is also, you cannot do it without them.
And you talked about heroes. What's next for Jane Fernandez?
Good question. Open for opportunities if anyone needs anyone. But I'm wrapping up the World Cup, doing all the final reporting now. I'm still on with FIFA until the end of December. And then I'll wait and see. I mean, as I said, there's a number of major events coming to our part of the world. I'm still very passionate about major sports events. They have this unique ability to bring people together from all walks of life to have conversations about so many really important things that drive social change. And I think that is why I love them. We set out to ensure we delivered a tournament that inspired and entertained, and we definitely did that. And I think that the fact that we have created change through football is something that all sports can do, and I'm still really passionate about that space. So I may turn up somewhere in that area. Let's wait and see.
I'm sure you will. So James, unfortunately, we're beginning to run out of time, and obviously we don't want to be the people that sort of delayed everyone else after the start we had. But I just want to thank you for flying up from Sydney, for sharing all your stories with the Women's World Cup. Obviously, an amazing story, and I think on behalf of the audience, I just want to wish you well with your next endeavour, and I'm sure it'll be a success. Jane Fernandez.
Thank you very much.